Hey everyone, and welcome to the final episode for season 4 of We Need to Talk. After today, I will be taking 2 weeks off and we'll return on May 17th with more conversations and an incredible guest list. So make sure you're following We Need to Talk the podcast on all social media to keep up with our posts and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss season 5 premiere. But for my last episode today, I'm very excited to welcome my final guest of the season. He wears many hats as a writer, director, and military veteran. And most recently, he's the head writer for the Japanese anime Netflix series Yasuke that is out on Netflix, starring Lakeith Stanfield, Nick Jones Jr. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You have a very interesting career trajectory, starting off in the military and then transitioning into Hollywood. I feel like you don't hear that very often. And you've been in writers' rooms and you've worked with a lot of notable networks and you've had a lot of projects that you've been recognized for. And you chose a field that is still really lacking in terms of representation. And I just kind of want to know, what was your path, in order to get through that door and get seen, leaving the military and going into writing, because sadly in 2021, there are still a lot of barriers for specifically Black people that they have to break through. So what was your path in order to get into these writer rooms and get your work seen?
The crazy, it's a crazy story. It was actually President Obama. He was the person that kind of changed my trajectory when I was in the military and gave me that confidence to say,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go ahead and try it. And so after having like a chance encounter with him and spent Christmas with him back in 2008.
That's the dream, to spend time with Obama.
It was amazing. It was life changing. Like literally, like I'd still be in the Marine Corps if we hadn't met.
Wow.
And him telling me, nah, like what do you want to do and stuff. And at the time I wanted to be an actor, and I was just like, yeah, I want to be in the industry. I want to act and I think it's impossible though. And he was just like, that's when he looked at me and was like, I'm a Black man about to be president. Like nothing's impossible. And
Wow.
that's when, him and Michelle just kind of, gave me the talk. I
love it.
I was their adoptive son. And then, I learned a lot of stuff from him and really it just lit a fire under, can I say?
You can, yes.
Yeah, it just lit a fire into my ass. I was like,
You're good.
yeah. And so, yeah. And we talked about the GI Bill and stuff, which I, ended up using later and going to film school. And kind of got my start, just kind of, head to the ground, just trying to figure out like the groundwork and things of that nature. And then, and so becoming a military advisor was kind of like a nice transition. And this was after acting. So, I did some acting before that, got my SAG card, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Went to film school for directing and became a military advisor. So I did this movie called Man Down, with Shia LaBeouf and Gary Oldman. And so I did a lot of rewrites on that film as well and helping make sure like all of the military stuff was accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that led to me doing this WGA workshop that they do for veterans here in LA. So I did that and I met the screenwriter, Ashley Miller, who wrote X-Men First Class and Thor. He was a huge like military supporter and stuff. And I just kind of caught him in the hall one day. I was like, hey, you need an assistant? He was just like, what? Perfect timing.
Oh my gosh. Look at that.
So then he took me under his wing and I learned like all of like the stuff that you don't learn in film school. I learned all that stuff from Ashley and he, showed me the ropes when it came to screenwriting on a professional level and what the studios and what the networks are really looking for. And then once he thought I was ready, he took my scripts and sent it off to his representation, his manager. And she was just like, yeah, like this is dope. I'm going to sign him. And then after that, I kind of jumped from the nest and was able to kind of, forge my own career.
That's incredible. I love that it all started with Obama though.
It's like, I'm not in politics, but I do consider myself, from the Barack Obama tree.
Right. I love that. So let's talk about the lack of representation within the writers' room. But what do you think that we need to do in order to get more people of color in those writers' rooms so that our stories are told from an authentic way? Because I think the issue that I've always had with how our stories, and I'm specifically speaking from a Black experience, the how our stories are presented is that there aren't enough people that have actually had those lived experiences writing those stories. So I guess this is kind of a two-part question, but one, how do we get more people of color in the writers' rooms? But also, what would you say, for people of color, but specifically Black people, what would you say to help them try to get into those writer rooms so that we can tell our stories more authentically?
It's kind of twofold. So I think the reason why I feel like the rooms are like they are, and it's tough to get in. We don't have enough people of color in positions at the studios to say, hey, look, we're going to greenlight this show, greenlight that show,
Yeah.
and greenlight the not just like Black stories, because there's some Black stories that get greenlit that aren't created by Black people or people of color. And so I think it kind of starts with that. Like, we need more execs in those positions to greenlight our stories, which in turn would create more, diverse stories, which in turn will create more diverse rooms, because then you'd have, someone diverse at, either, creator or showrunner that's going to say, hey, look, yeah, like I want to pick writers that have a similar experience or at least know this world and things of that nature. So that's like one side of it. The other side too is just, for me, it's not letting, whether it's the industry or your representation kind of pigeonhole you into like just one spectrum. Growing up, like I think Black people everywhere, it's just like we lived and we grew up in a white society for the most part. So it's just like we had to learn how to like, code switch.
Yes.
Turn it on and turn it off, things of that nature. On the flip side, white people don't have to know what it's like to be like us, right, or to like, walk in our shoes and be in our lane and things of that nature. But we've constantly had to do that. And so we have a very diverse like skill set of being able to like, tell stories from different angles and stuff. And I think a lot of times, it's framed, well, actually all of the time it's framed the opposite way, where it's just like, oh, well, you're Black, so you can only tell a Black story, and so then they just try and pigeonhole you to like, oh, well, we want you to be on this show because it's about Black people or this or that. But yet, this white guy can make a show about like, a bunch of Black kids in, or like The Wire, for instance, that was made by a white guy, things like that.
Yeah.
That are heavily influenced by Black culture. So I think for me, I would say for a lot of Black writers and just writers of color, don't allow people to pigeonhole you into what stories that you can tell, and write everything, whether it's adventure, sci-fi, and we are getting those more of those opportunities now, where we have shows like Lovecraft Country and them, and we're making movies like Get Out and things of that nature. But Get Out was so groundbreaking because we weren't getting opportunities to really tell those stories. I mean, like maybe once every 20, 30 years, where it's like Candyman, Get Out. It's like, and I don't know who wrote Candyman, but I mean, I don't know if it was a Black guy. I don't know. So
right.
I don't want to stick a foot in my throat on that one, but
but you brought up something that I've had this conversation often, just in terms of like Black people having the skill set of being able to turn on and turn off, and you're right. White people don't have to do that. Like, we as Black creatives have to know white people in our life. We have to. In order to get in the door, or just in terms of creating content, like we have to know what the quote unquote white experience is, because that's been the default for so long. White writers and white creatives, they don't have to know the Black experience whatsoever. And I almost feel like there's this, people are adverse to it because they don't think that Black people have a normal experience. There are Black people that have mundane experiences where they just don't do anything throughout the day, but we actually never even see those stories. I feel like when it comes to Black stories, we either see trauma, we see, those Remember the Titans type stories, or we see, the Dangerous Minds type stories where they're like the black students. You know what I mean? But we don't see, for example, like Nomadland. Could you imagine if that was like a black female? But I'm sure there are black females
Yeah.
that are going through those same scenarios, but we would never see that because they just don't attribute those to us in our stories.
Solve problems.
Yeah,
we don't get a lot
that's a
of
great way to put it.
with solve problems, which brings you shameless plug, kind of, sort of. But a friend of mine, she's got a show coming out called Run the World.
Mm.
And it's solve problems. It's basically Sex in the City, but with black women.
Love it.
You see them, living, and just doing their thing. And it's not that struggle stuff, the struggle stories that's always kind of, placed at our doorstep. And, my significant other is in that as well.
I love it. Great. I can't wait to watch that. When does that come out?
May 16th.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, now I don't want to get you in trouble, but is there anyone that you've worked with in terms of studios that you feel like is really getting it right in terms of diversity, inclusion, and being very forward thinking and making progress that we've been, so longing for?
Oh, well, Netflix. I mean, and that's where my show's at right now.
Yeah. So why do you think that they're getting it right?
I think outside of, the initiative that they've, put out there, very straightforward, Strong Black Lead, which is one of their initiatives, and making sure that, they're highlighting their black creatives and black leads. I think the space, the fact that they've kind of, they're shaping the industry. I mean, they've shaped the industry, and everyone is jumping into the streaming wars game. Like, it was just Netflix, and now everybody has a streaming service.
Right.
And I think with Netflix, because they were the first to plant their flag on the moon with this, they've allowed themselves this just endless canvas of like, hey, we're just going to drop stuff, and and we've got a big enough subscription base, and it allows for them to make decisions based off the creative and not necessarily the box office, because there isn't necessarily a bomb because they have so many subscribers. So it's just like, people are going to watch it, people aren't going to watch it, but hey, it's still there.
Right.
Okay, so it allows for more flexibility.
They're willing to take the risk, and I like that. I do appreciate that. That's great. Definitely. So and even speaking of Netflix, I mean, they even dominated the Oscars in terms of nominations, which is wild that streaming sites are getting so much recognition at those awards now. So did you watch the Oscars?
I did.
So I want to ask your opinion because, as much as I love all of the content that was created by people of color, we did see a lot of recognition for Black people and a lot of recognition for the Asian community. And as I was watching, I was having these feelings of feeling like they were trying to atone for something. And then I got angry with myself because I didn't want to be feeling that way, And so do you think that we're ever going to get past that point where we're not skeptical when we actually are recognized for our work? Because I don't want to be skeptical. I want to think that it's authentic, that they're recognizing these people of color that have put in the work, that they had great content, but it also just felt very fishy to me.
I mean, I didn't get that feeling, because I mean, when I look at people like Daniel Kaluuya, and it's just like,
he's amazing.
Yeah, he killed that performance.
Absolutely,
he had to win.
Absolutely.
So when I see those things, it's like, oh yeah, he was recognized, and he got the the win. Obviously I was upset about the Chadwick.
And because they kind of duped us. I felt gaslit at the end.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. I mean, Chadwick. There were so many layers to that performance, especially once we found out what was going on, and then you go back to that speech where he's like, cursing at God.
It was, it just made it all too real. Yeah,
like, to know what, I mean, damn, man, he should have won. And
he should have.
It's not like a lifetime achievement type thing or anything like that. Like, his performance, and to be able to perform like that in those conditions, which if you go back, which was some of the same things they said about when Leonardo DiCaprio won for The Revenant, and they were talking about he had to go through so much and blah, blah, blah. And he's out there in the wilderness and he's cold and this and that. Well, Chadwick was on his deathbed making this
Literally,
film
he was
and
battling
giving you that
cancer.
amazing. Yes. So, I mean, if you're going to award Leonardo DiCaprio for being in the cold, then, bruh.
Yeah. But honestly, I felt like in Life or Death, like he deserved to win. Like, and
Yeah.
I actually take the time to see all the films. I'm a member of SAG as well. I get all my screeners. I watch them. There was not a better performance, in my opinion, than Chadwick's.
You know, he killed it. He killed it.
Yeah. Yeah. But do you understand people's skepticism?
I do. I do. You know, but it's just like, I gotta, because, you know, we're in it. So it's just like, I kind of have to just hope for the best.
Yeah. No, for sure. I get that. Well, let's talk a little bit about your new Netflix series, Yasuke. You know, I admittedly, I have never been into anime, and it's just not something that I've been drawn to, but I know it's becoming more popular in many different communities. So this seems like this character and these stories is really a step forward for anime as a whole. So tell me a little bit about the story and how it came to be and how you got involved with the project.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Yasuke is an actual historical figure that who lived during feudal Japan back in you know, the 1500s or 16th century, and yeah, so I remember kind of coming across it back in the day when I was in the military and stuff, and I spent some time in Japan and just kind of hearing about the myth, and so working on this project, I was able to really kind of, you know, dive into the legend of it. But you know, he's a real Black guy, and some of the historical facts, it's a little murky because no one knows everything. But the facts that we do know is that he came as a servant to these Jesuit priests who you know, who brought him to Japan, and which is where he caught the eye of one of the feudal warlords at the time, Oda Nobunaga, who was trying to unify Japan. And he was so impressed by him that, you know, he, you know, brought him in under his wing, you know, taught him the culture, made him a general in his army, and made him a samurai. And they fought alongside each other up until Nobunaga's death. And so fascinating story, one of which, I mean, it's just one of which I wish was more prevalent when I was a kid growing up, because I mean, this is one of those, like, every you know, we should know about Yasuke, like, you know, we were taught about, you know, Christopher Columbus, you know, who or whoever. It's just like, yo, this dude like went to another, was taken to another land and became and was a hero, and you know, in many senses, and was a great warrior. So yeah, I mean, to be able to kind of tell that story, or at least, you know, get a bit of the historical facts out in the midst of like this fantastical story was great. I kind of came part of the project. I got a random email from Netflix one Sunday, and they were just like, "Hey, you know, we got your name from AC Bradley, who's the showrunner for What If, which is another show that's getting ready to come out for Marvel." And they were, you know, they needed a writer for this show, and so she was like, "Yo, like, if Nick's the guy," and so they were just like, "Yeah, do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Is that just asking me?" And they were like, "Yeah, you know," they're like, "We got, you know, LaShawn Thomas is directing, Lakeith Stanfield starring in it, Flying Lotus is doing the music. We need a writer. What's up?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." I was like, well, "Why would I say no to this?" And so yeah, so, you know, when I came on, they had like a rough idea of what, you know, they wanted to do, and kind of have like this this protector story with like this grizzled, you know, 20 years later Yasuke protecting this young child who has abilities and stuff, and I was like, all right, you know, that's cool, and for me, you know, I just wanted to, you know, one of the first things I said was, hey, if we're gonna, you know, tell this story, like, let's you know, I want people to be able to learn something. Let's actually show where he came from, and tell a bit of the legend. You know, we got to know where, you know, where he came from to know where he's going for the most part. And so I was able to kind of infuse that into the story, and really, you know, dive into a bit of the historical facts that we do know, and kind of merging, you know, history with fantasy, and just, you know, make it, you know, at least flesh him out, at least flesh out Yasuke as much as possible, and have people, know more about, the historical facts and the legend that makes him who he is, and what makes him so dope. And I thought that was cool, and really, and then finding the entry point for that too. Like for me, it was, they have this ritual suicide, which Nobunaga did, where they gut themselves. And part of that ritual suicide is once you gut yourself, you have somebody chop your head off. And
oh my goodness.
it's pretty gruesome. And so being in the military, and having known a few people and friends that have committed suicide, and knowing how I felt personally when it was somebody that was close to me, and really thinking about, okay, well, how would Yasuke feel, going through that, and not only witnessing the suicide, but contributing with it as well, as part of like the ceremony. Like, he'd be devastated. And so that was like the emotional center for me for the story. And then just kind of building out that, showing the events that led to that moment, and then the trauma that follows that moment, and seeing how someone with, survivor's remorse, or be guilty of that, kind of rebounds, and is able to find purpose again, moving forward.
Yeah. How much of an intersection is there with the Japanese culture and then Black culture? Because I know it is a historical figure, but how much are you trying to weave both of those into this story?
I mean, I think you can't tell it without the Black culture, because he's Black.
Right.
So I think inherently, it's through that lens, especially with him being the main character. So we're kind of looking at it through a Black lens. And so one of the things I didn't want to do was shy away from what it's like being the only Black man in a space.
Yes. Which I'm sure many of us have have experienced that and feel that. Yeah.
You know that feeling. And there's the subtle racism, there's the overt racism and prejudice that kind of goes with that. And it's like that line from Scandal, with Papa Pope, where he's just like, you gotta, what he said, you gotta do twice as much to get half of what they got. I was a huge Scandal fan. So.
Oh, me too. Trust me, I watched it more than once, actually.
Like, what is it? You can't. He said, you can't take command. Gotta be command. Yeah. But it's that, and so I didn't want to shy away from those moments where, no matter what he does to kind of prove himself, he's just not accepted fully by the culture. And back then, especially in feudal Japan, like, they were very very staunch about the old way, and very stuck in tradition, and and prideful people. And so it's just like, what's that like for a Black man, in the 16th century? And he's the only person there, trying to serve and do his thing. Part of what made that relationship between him and Oda Nobunaga so cool was that, Nobunaga was a futurist in a lot of ways, and very progressive. So, he was the first person that was really like bringing in villagers and stuff to noble status, and making them samurai and stuff. He was just like, yo, if you can fight, if you can do the job, you got the position.
Right.
And he was just like, yo, like, anybody can get it type situation. So, foreigners, women, he was introducing like women samurai, and obviously with Yasuke, foreigner samurai and stuff. So that was definitely something we wanted to kind of show, and make sure that, it adds to just, some of it adds to the trauma, to like, who he is, and what he went through. It adds to just more baggage, on the back.
Right. Are there any like modern themes that you tried to weave, even though it is kind of a historical series?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say that one, being a Black man in another space, or being the only Black man in it, and stuff. And definitely we deal with, PTSD, and which was something I wanted to touch on, being a military veteran.
For sure.
And, trying to think, I mean, we layered a lot of stuff in there. but I'd say those are kind of like the two main ones. It's just, you know, learning how to, or at least adapting to, in a lot of ways, a hostile situation or a hostile environment with individuals that aren't necessarily rooting for you, and still being able to kind of overcome those obstacles, and also, dealing with trauma, and recouping from it, and learning to, find purpose again, and and just be a protector and be great. Yeah.
How do you hope it will be received by the hardcore anime community?
I mean, it's once again, I mean, the anime space is a space that is not necessarily diverse.
Yeah. So this is a risk. I mean, it's a huge risk, but I hope and pray for you guys that it's a big reward. But so, what are you hoping from the anime community the response will be?
Yeah, I hope people are entertained. At the very least, and that, we feel very confident in that. I feel people will be entertained with the story, with the characters, with the spectacle, and just definitely the music. Like Flying Lotus killed it.
Oh, awesome! I can't wait.
I mean, 2 of the tracks are out now. Black Gold, which is our opening theme song.
Sweet.
And Between Memories, which is the credits song, which is amazing. But yeah, no, I just, I'm hoping, people learn something. Kind of in the sense of, I remember when Watchmen came out, the TV show, and everybody was just going off on Twitter stuff like, "Oh, I didn't know about the Tulsa Massacre," and I was like,
"Ooh, child!" I was like, "What?
How
did you not know?"
So, but it's like I get it, because it's like you said before, white people didn't really have
to know. They didn't have to know. That's our history. Yeah,
that's on us. And so in the same light with this, like I hope a lot of people, and I've seen a couple things online and stuff, where people like, "Oh wait, I heard this is like based off a real guy."
Yeah.
Everybody, like, Black people, Asian people, like whoever, like a lot of people just didn't know Yasuke existed. So I hope people, really get an opportunity to learn a bit of that, and do their own research if they're inspired to do so, and just be entertained by the show, and hopefully we stick the landing.
Was there a specific episode that you're like, "This is my favorite episode, and I can't wait for people to see it"?
Yeah.
I know there's 6 episodes that are coming out, right? Okay, so yeah, do you have a favorite one that you wrote?
Episode 2.
Without giving it away, can you tell me kind of why it's your favorite?
Because I dive into a lot of what I talked about as far as like being a Black man in a space, being the only Black man in the space.
Yeah.
So it really touches on the racism and the prejudice that kind of went in that social circle, that social hierarchy that Yasuke was kind of brought into and was a part of, Nobunaga's right hand guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, like definitely that one, because at that point, I felt like in a lot of those scenes and a lot of those moments, like it's more than just an anime show. Like it's
right.
It's a period drama with these amazing performances by Lakeith and Ming-Na Wen, who I'm a huge fan of since way back. Like I've been loving her since Street Fighter. And having them kind of like go back and forth talking about philosophies and ideals. It was really great to kind of like dive into that headspace and kind of have these budding ideals of what's right and what's honorable between those two characters, which it's almost like seeing a conversation play out between a Democrat and a Republican, and it's like why you believe in these and stuff, and vice versa. So it's definitely like a great just a great think piece. I think episode 2 is a great think piece, like outside of like the spectacle that's happening.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited to see it, and I'm glad that you were able to come on the show and share a little bit about yourself and your new series. Let everybody know where they can follow you and keep up with your great work.
Yeah, NJ Future on Twitter and Instagram. I'm usually out there just tweeting away if I can, and and watch Yasuke on Netflix.
Yes, make sure you guys all stream that and follow Nick. And we will be back in 2 weeks with more guests and more conversations and things that we need to talk about. Talk to you guys real soon. Bye.